Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's really a great honour to stand here and take part in this debate on behalf of the constituents of Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, because the subject that we're debating today really very much is a big part of the reason that I got into politics in the first place. I very much see, and I think a lot of members in this House agree with me, I see climate change as being the defining issue of the 21st century, not only in what kind of impacts we feel as a country and as a world, but also what humankind's response to it will be, because how we meet that challenge is going to determine effectively how life on this planet is going to go forward. Are we going to live in a sustainable manner? Are we going to live within our resources? Or are we going to have a very altered landscape where we have to drastically reduce how our day-to-day lives go? So I very much believe that the actions we take today, in the next few years, in the next decades, are going to be very telling for the generations that follow us. And Madam Speaker, I also want to stand here as a father of 3 children. I have twins who are almost 6 years old and a young 8-month-old. And, you know, when I come home and I see them, I think, you know, all of us agree, we do want to look ahead to those future generations as to what kind of a world we're leaving behind them. And I constantly think about the world they're going to inherit, and I realize that I, as a member of Parliament, occupy a very privileged position in Canadian society because I have a voice in this chamber. I have the ability to speak out on behalf of almost 100,000 Canadians who live in my riding. And that's a very privileged position, and so I'm constantly reminded of the great responsibility that comes with that, and to make use of the time that I do have in this House to try and contribute in some way to getting this country on a path towards a more sustainable future. Now, I think we can all agree that no other species on Earth has had as much impact on this planet as humans have. We have effectively grown to straddle the globe. No part is untouched by our influence, and indeed we're now in a unique position for the first time in this planet's history of actually having a determining role in its future, and that has never ever happened on Earth's history. And with that kind of power does come great responsibility, Madam Speaker. I look at the analogy of the frog sitting in a pot of water which is slowly heated up and goes up to boiling. The frog's not quite aware. I feel that is something similar to what we as humans are going on. We may not see from moment to moment what the actual effects of climate change are, but we have to look at this as a pattern over years and decades, and we can start to see the changes add up. And it is very incumbent upon us to take the power that we have in this House, the power that the government has to influence policy, to act and put us on a course of action, because it will cost us if we don't act. Yes, Madam Speaker, I just want to read you a quote from the economist Sir Nicholas Stern. He said, and I quote, "Failing to curb the impact of climate change could damage the global economy on the scale of the Great Depression or the World Wars by spawning environmental devastation that could cost 5 to 20% of the world's annual gross domestic product." Now, we have a Liberal government that likes to say that the economy and the environment go hand in hand. Well, I've just read out that quote that clearly explains what is at stake if we don't act on our environment. Because I very much feel that the economy is the junior partner in this. And there are economic opportunities that lie before us if we take the correct course of action. But if we don't, it's the economy that will suffer the greatest impact, because it very much relies on us having a clean environment and being able to survive in it. And that takes me to the next part, Madam Speaker, the elephant in the room, the reason why we're here today. You know, I heard some Liberal MPs questioning us why we felt the need to bring this motion forward today. Well, it's 2 words, it's Kinder Morgan. Because despite all of the Liberals' promises and platitudes towards the environment, no one in 2015 saw within their election platform a promise and a commitment to purchase a 60-year-old pipeline with a checkered history. And that's $4.5 billion, Madam Speaker, and that's only the beginning. That purchases the existing assets and does not take into account the billions more dollars that may have to be spent in order to expand it. And we still have very legitimate questions. Canadians have very legitimate questions as to where this money is actually going to come from, what Crown Corporation is going to take it over, are our pension plan funds actually going to be a part of it. And I think, Madam Speaker, it does kind of make a mockery of our climate change commitments, because if you have a government that is committed to meeting the Paris targets, but we look at the fact that the initial National Energy Board review did not consider either the upstream or the downstream greenhouse gas emissions of Trans Mountain, which is odd for a pipeline that's projected to add at least 13 to 15 megatons per year from increased oil sands production. And then if you look at the downstream emissions from a pipeline, if we were to expand it, it's estimated to be about 71.1 megatons per year. Now, if we look at where we're trying to get in terms of keeping global temperatures stable, and we realize, we can do some analytical modeling on how much carbon dioxide we can emit into the atmosphere to meet those, it gives every country on this world a carbon budget, how much you can. And in a day and age where it's widely acknowledged that climate change is real, it's happening, and that we are the source of it, expanding a pipeline and expanding oil sands production flies in the face of our commitments. You can't, in this case, walk and chew gum at the same time. It does not work. I acknowledge that we are going to continue using oil today, tomorrow, and for the foreseeable future. But what I'd like to see, Madam Speaker, is a transition plan where we try to actually plateau and start minimizing our use. The oil sands workers of Alberta have made a very valuable contribution to the Canadian economy, and they will continue to do so for the years ahead. But we need to have that conversation with the workers of Alberta, and I'll refute the misguided claims of the Liberal Party that we are not acknowledging the workers. We very much are. The member for Edmonton Strathcona, a proud Albertan, has been standing in this House repeatedly talking about the workers of Alberta, talking about the electricians, the welders, people who have those important transferable skills and can bring them to bear on other lines of work. If only we had a national government that was putting us on the correct course of action. Because, Madam Speaker, if you look at Canada's national emissions, fully 50% of them come from our oil and gas and our transportation, if you add those both up. So those are two obvious targets that we need to address if we're going to have any meaningful action on climate change. And when you look at, the labor force, like we've got quotes from the Canadian Labour Congress, we have quotes from Unifor, we have organizations like Blue Green Canada, who are all saying what we're saying in this House, what the NDP is saying, that, we have people who have the skills, but we need to have that national strategy. I think it becomes even more imperative because, Madam Speaker, there are literally trillions of dollars up for grabs if we position ourselves at this moment. If we look at the trend the world is taking in this 21st century and the fact that all of this money is there waiting, but we need to set ourselves on the right course of action, it does not mean investing in an old pipeline. It does not mean investing in a new one. It does mean looking after the current workers in the energy sector, retraining them, and positioning ourselves. I mean, you look at all of the different renewable energy sources, combining the possibilities of tidal power, geothermal, solar, and wind. Any one of these by itself cannot meet our needs. But we have to look at a decentralized energy grid where it's all working together. You look at the advent of electric cars, they are going to be cheaper to buy, cheaper to maintain, and cheaper to operate. Market forces will have their effect and people will start moving en masse. So, Madam Speaker, I will just end by repeating what we're debating today with our motion. We want this country to be a global climate change leader, and we want to build that clean energy economy. And that means that we have to make those investments. We have to put workers and skills training at the heart of this transition. And it means fundamentally that we do not spend billions of dollars on a pipeline and its expansion. That money could have been better used elsewhere. And I know that future generations and even many Canadians today We're expecting a lot of different out of this Liberal government, and I was hoping that they would do that as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.